Let's talk about HTML tables. Tables help us organize content into rows and columns. Tables can be used for data, just like in an Excel spreadsheet, or tables can be used just to format layouts for your various web pages. To get a better understanding of how tables work, let's create one. But first, let's create a new document. Let's call it tables.html. Make sure you get that extension right. And let's create a whole new document using Emmet, just like before. The HTML, go down to :5. And we'll give this a title of tables. And to start out, let's create a really simple table. The tag for table is, of course, table. And tables are made up of, like I said, rows and columns. So let's just make 2 columns and 1 row. So each row is made up of the tr tag. And within that, let's create 2 table definitions, which are cells. Let's say 1 and 2. And let's see how that looks. And I'm just going to drag this over into my browser and hit enter. So 1 and 2. The problem here is that we can't really see anything. Doesn't look like anything is happening. Nothing is formatted. To make things show up a little more clearly, let's go over some of the attributes for table. Border. This indicates the thickness of the border that will go around the table. Let's give it 1 pixel. Let's save that and see how it looks. That's looking a little better. We can also give the border a color. Let's go with red. Okay. We can also indicate how much padding we want inside each cell with cell padding. Let's say 5. Save that, refresh. Okay. Now we can also indicate how much spacing we want between the lines by indicating our cell spacing. Let's give that 10, just to show the difference. Okay. And another one that's very important is the width. To get started, let's just set this to 100% of the browser window. Hit save, refresh. And now you'll notice that the table expands and contracts as I expand and contract the browser. I can do it the whole way across the screen and it's going to stay with me. All right, so now let's create a few additional rows. And to do that, we'll just copy down this whole table row definition. 2, 3, 4. Let's do 5. Why not? Save, refresh. So now you see we have 2 columns and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows for a total of 10 cells. Now, if you've ever made an Excel spreadsheet, you know you can have header rows. A header is just like a table definition cell. It goes inside of a row, except the tag is th. They're essentially the same, but they're treated a little bit differently by the browser. So let's just give this an example header of example 1 and example 2. And we'll come up with better examples in the next one. I just want to show you how these work. Save, refresh. And one thing you'll notice right away is that the table header definition is bolded and it's aligned to the center. We can also align everything else to the center, or we can align this to the left. Let's try aligning this to the left just to see how that works. Let's save just that one. All right, now that one is aligned to the left. And for fun, let's align this to the right. That's great. So just to make everything look good, let's center everything right down the middle. And so I'm going to do that for each of these cells. Align equals center. And save and refresh. Now everything is aligned to the center, no matter how wide it gets. Now right now we're using 100% width, but we can also specify a smaller percentage, say 50%. Let's save that, see how it looks. And of course, it stays 50% of the full browser width the whole time. We can try 25. Same idea. Tables also support fixed widths. So let's say I want to keep the width to 500 pixels. Let's save that and refresh. Now you'll notice that the table stays the same width no matter how wide I stretch the browser. Another thing you can do that you can also do in Excel is merge columns. So let's say we want to make just a header for the whole table. But instead of creating two column definitions for the table headers, we're going to say call span equals 2. And let's give this an H1 tag. And let's just say very important data goes here. And let's save that and see how it looks. So you'll note that this spans both columns and stays centered. The same idea applies to spanning rows. Let's say we want this one to span. We would type in span here so we know which one we're working with. And then we would use the row span attribute and we'll say 2. Let's delete the one below it because this should expand down into that definition. Let's make it 3 and delete the one below that and save that and refresh. And now it has expanded down 3 rows. Now let's say you wanted to have another table inside of this table. This would be called a nested table, and that is completely possible. And to do that, let's first create our second table down here. And let's give it a few rows. And let's just say this is going to be our list of movies with ranks. So let's just list a few movies. Up, rank that number 1. Ghostbusters, that just got moved to number 1. Let's move that up. And let's say The Goonies, that's ranked number 3. Number 4, Good Will Hunting. Number 5, Jaws. Okay, we've got our data. Let's also give this a border of, let's say, 5. Border color. Let's differentiate it by making it green. Let's give it some cell padding of 2. Cell spacing of 2. Actually, let's make cell spacing 0. And let's give it a width of 50%. Save and refresh, and it shows up down here. Oops, we forgot to give ourselves some table headers, so let's do that. Movie, rank. And let's save that and refresh. I want this left aligned, so I'm going to say align left. Same here, align equals left. Save, refresh. Now I want to put this table here. So to do that, I'm going to copy the entire table, cut it rather, and where it says span, I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to paste the other table. And then I'm going to save and refresh. And here's our table. Note that it is centered because we've specified align center here, and it takes up 50% of the width of the cell. If we specify 100% for the nested table, it takes up 100% of the available space. And since the parent table is fixed width, it's going to stay 100% relative to the parent table. Now, let's set the width of the parent table to be 50% of the page. Let's save and refresh. Notice how the child and the parent both contract and expand as they make the browser width larger and smaller. If I set both to 100%, save and refresh, then the tables expand 100% within their available space, as you would expect. Now, what would we do if we wanted to have some text, but we didn't want the text to wrap? Instead, we didn't want the table to be limited by the size of the screen, but instead let the text push it where it needs to go. So let's get some long text from loremipsum.io, just like we did in the previous video. Let's only get one paragraph. It's going a bit slow. Copy that. And here, let's do a call span of 2 here. Replace 1 with our paragraph and get rid of this column or this cell and save. And let me turn on word wrap here really quick. Okay, so this text should wrap. So let's see what happens. I'm going to save this and hit refresh. And sure enough, our text is wrapping. And it expands and contracts with the table. And it's aligned to center. Let's left align this just for the heck of it. Save or refresh. All right. So it's behaving just like we would expect. But what if we don't want this text to be limited by the size of the table? Well, there's a tag for that. We use the no wrap tag. Let's save that and hit refresh. Now the table is no longer constrained by the size of the screen, but by the minimum length of the text. But since this looks terrible, I'm going to remove it and get rid of this entire row and save. The last thing I'll show you is vertical alignment. So let's merge these two cells. And that would be this and this one here. Row span equals 2. And let's get rid of this. We're just going to have an empty table row definition there. Save and refresh. And now it's taking up both. But say we want this 2 to be aligned to the bottom. Well, there's an attribute that will help us with that. Instead of align, we'll use v-align. Bottom. Save, refresh. And now it's aligned to the bottom. If we want it to line up to the top, we can do that. If we want it to align to the top right, we can do that. Now what if we want our parent table to have a different background color? For that, there's the BG color tag. Let's give it a blue background color and save and refresh. Oh, that is interesting. Let's change this to white. White border color. And let's change the child color here also to white and refresh. You know, let's actually change this to light gray and save and refresh. There, that's a little better. We can also change the background color of the nested table. Let's change that to light yellow. Save and refresh. Of course, typically when you're doing web development, you aren't styling tables this way, you're using CSS, but for the purposes of this course, that's practically all you need to know. See you in the next one.